Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Al's Air Guns. Hey, we are taking a closer look at our Beeman QB78E. And this is a 177 caliber CO2 gun that we did an unboxing on. I've also been out and I have been shooting it out at the range and also had done a little more research and gained a little more knowledge about exactly what this thing is. So, the QB78 had its roots in the Crossman 160. The Crossman 160 was a 22 caliber, two capsule CO2 gun, single shot, bolt action that came out in the mid 1950s. And it as well, it went through three changes in models over the course of its life. And it was in production until 1971. Now, those three variations were really just changes in the trigger guards and things like that. There were also a number of model variants that had peep sights and different features, and they were 167s, 166, 180, which only had a single CO2 canister and was designed for use. Anyway, the original Model 160 got about 30 shots out of the two CO2 cartridges, was hard hitting in 22 caliber, very popular. Actually, the United States Air Force picked up a number of them for training. So yeah, nice rifle, but that went out of production in 1971. People cried, begged Crossman to bring it back. And during the lull between the 160 and its later successor, the 2260, there were a couple of decades there. And during that time, in order to satisfy the demand for the 160 style rifle, few investors got together and wanted to see about having a copy of it, actually an improved version, produced in China. And the first thing they did was engage the services of a well-known air gunsmith, a fellow named Tim McMurray. You may know Tim from Mac 1, did a lot of target pistol work for old Crossman Mark 1s, also did a pumper on steroids conversion for the old Sheridan and Benjamin pumpers. But yeah, they employed Tim to go ahead and see if they could make some improvements to the Crossman 160. One of the big improvements that they did achieve was better gas efficiency. And the QB78, when it came out, was producing more like 60 shots, full power shots out of the two CO2 cartridges rather than the 30 of the Model 60. Offered some other refinements along the way. Anyway, the QB78 was being produced in China, and it's been brought into this country under a number of brand names. I always think of it as a industry brand rifle, which was the generic name that Norinco or some of the Chinese factories used to go by. We saw it in this market as Compasco, the Tech Force 78, 79. 79 is the target stock version. Currently, they're coming out as Beeman, but have known this under a number of names through the years. So when you see one of these, you know, it'll typically say 78. Sometimes they'll say something else, but they will have a variety of brands that were associated with them. Really good that Beeman's importing them. Beeman's a very strong importer here in the U.S., and they've done a very fine job with this line of rifles and, well, actually other products as well, the Beeman pistols and whatnot too. So I'm going to take a break for a second here on the camera, and we will restart real quickly. Okay, you may have seen this before, but this is one of the first rifles that I've used that is the 12-gram cartridge system. And this rifle is low on gas, so I wanted to go ahead and replace those cartridges in this video. Now, one of the interesting things about it, this gun uses a pressurized tube. So once the cartridges are pierced, they fill this entire tube with CO2, and you cannot budge this cap when there's pressure in it like that. Now, the cap itself, oops, I get my shirt in there. The cap itself also, of course, you want to make sure you're empty when you're doing this, and we'll go ahead and put this on safe too. But the cap itself has very fine threads, which means it feels sometimes like you are unscrewing forever. And I must have a little bit of pressure in there because it's kind of stiff tonight to unscrew. Let's go ahead and discharge a couple of those. It is a cock-on closing, so there's more resistance than you're used to in closing that bolt. Yeah, it's pretty far down, but we got a little in there apparently. Let's see if that makes it easier. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, very fine threads. Seems like it takes about 300 rotations to screw it on and off. Now you hear the rest of it releasing. There we go. All right. So the theory here is these go in opposing each other. The first one's going to go in nose first, facing the valve in the gun, and the second one will go in butt first with the nose out. So they're going to go in like that, all right? And we're going to put a drop of Pell gun oil on each. Always a good idea. And also on these threads. I like to keep those lubricated too, since they are actually our pressure system. So we'll put that guy in there. Okay. Another one here. And we put that one in that way. So when we thread this cap on, it will actually puncture the top CO2 cartridge. They say that you should tighten it down till you feel it puncture and then back it off a quarter of a turn. Well, to be honest, I've never really felt it puncture. And when I've tightened it down, it pretty much just stayed where I found tight to be. Now, I don't know if I was going too fast or what. Then after you've punctured that one, you fire the air gun, and doing that should cause the valve to pierce the rear cartridge, okay? Now, see, once I do that, I can't turn it back a quarter of a turn. But let's go ahead and see if we can pierce that second one. Got a little oil on the bolt. There we go. Yep, we were at full power. Go ahead and put that on safe. Very cool. So that is how you power it. These days, and why I wanted to top it off is I want to go ahead and record performance now over both the chronograph, and I'd like to do a shot string and see how many useful shots we get out of it. As I understand it, the rifles continued to see improvements to the point where we should really expect a good 70 shots out of it, I believe. Somewhere between 60 and 80 shots. In 177, which this rifle is, also available in 22, I've heard people are getting 80 shots out of it. So I'm very curious about that. The speed's supposed to be in 177, we're supposed to be right about 600 feet per second for lead pellets, so 650 for alloy. Obviously, we've got a pretty long barrel here. I think it's like 21 inches or so. I'd have to measure that. We do have a dovetail on the breech, so we could mount a scope or some kind of optic if we choose. The sights are in fact fiber optic. We've got green in the rear, red in the front, and those work very well. I've got some close-ups of all of that. Safety is odd, and let me make a comment too. This has a very good trigger. I understand this trigger is adjustable, but it is also a remarkable trigger. Also, I understood, and I've been told by Joseph in our comments, that you can take this apart and convert it to a rather than a cock-on closing to a cock-on opening. But I don't have any interest in doing that. I think it's just fine the way it is. Other than that, in shooting it, I've found it to work really well. The one concern I've had, and I'll show a close-up of this, when you're loading the rifle, the .177 caliber pellet is small enough that if you're not careful, it can drop into this crack here. Let me see if I can get a close-up of it. I've had it almost happen once, and I was able to turn the air gun over and shake it out. It looks to me like if you got a pellet in there, it could jam you up, and you may end up doing a disassembly to go ahead and clear it. So next thing we're going to do is put in a little of the shooting video I did when I was out at the range, and then we'll go ahead and follow that up in another episode and talk about performance in terms of number of shots, average velocity, what pellets it liked, and all of those good things. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one.